Go ahead and share my to get started with this one. So thanks for having me here, everybody. It's a real treat to be here with you virtually at ZconV. I really appreciate being a part of this community. I'm really proud of everybody that I work with there at Zcash Foundation, and proud of the folks at ECC, proud of everybody at Zcash community. And KYC, AML, law frustrating life that I live, fight against because I fight against all the things that I teach about. Let's jump in. Of U.S. the implications AML of U.S. AML prosecutions. I want to talk about where we are right now. I want to talk about where we are right now as a community. Future. I want to talk about the future. Hopefully, offer some insight that's useful. First, like every lawyer, I'm going to do a disclaimer. And a disclaimer. Lawyers have to do. Sorry. Lawyers have to do. Sorry. Look, I'm not here to endorse. DOJ's their actions. Their actions. In fact, I'm a critic of it. In fact, I'm a critic of it. In one of the cases, I'm going to talk about today. As a pro bono expert for the defense, and have fought against it and gotten to know some of these defendants. I'm not here to endorse it. I'm not here to endorse it. I'm not here because today's a risk management exercise. Today's a risk management exercise. So today is assume that they win. Assume that they win. The four cases I'm talking about today. Assume DOJ wins. Assume DOJ wins. In terms of what does that mean? Despite the fact that I strongly oppose what they're doing because I believe it's illegal. Because I believe it's illegal. Because I believe their authority under law. Exceeds their authority under law. This is a risk management exercise. So this is a risk management exercise. How do you manage risk? I'm not your lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. I'm on the board. I sit on the board. Time in the ZF board. I'm not a lawyer. ZF board. I'm not a lawyer. I advise ZFECC and ZCC to hire lawyers. Rely on the advice of lawyers. The advice for privacy when I can. Fight for privacy when I can. So we're at a difficult lawyers. I fight for privacy when I can. So we're at a difficult stage here. We're at the and then they fight you stage for privacy. These four cases I'm going to talk about today. I think it's probably true of a lot of people in privacy communities, in all crypto privacy communities. We're a small world. I think it's probably true that a lot of people have been watching these prosecutions, and the first thing you think about in your head, and it's atrocious that this is true, but it's true. It was true. 6 a.m. Even though I think what I'm doing is perfectly legal and legitimate. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And so hopefully part of what I can do here today is allay concerns, because Zcash is very different from anything described in even the most egregious abuses of power in DOJ prosecutions to date. Hopefully I can do that. Hopefully I can give us a framework to think about the future. So that's what I'm here to do today. So hopefully I can, I guess, maybe both get you thinking about things to be concerned about in the future, but also allay any current concerns you might have about where we stand today in the past, because I don't think the past and I don't think the present is concerning at all. So let's jump in. These four cases, I'm going to suggest the community study and get to know. It's very weird to me teaching securities law that so many people in the crypto community know about the Howey test. This is a thing that like crypto builders know the Howey test so well, and it's a symptom of the dysfunction at the SEC that so many people in the crypto community have had to learn about the Howey test. I think in the same way, if you're going to build in privacy, I think you need to study these four cases. I think you need to download them. Websites like Court Listener have texts of the major filings in these cases, the indictments, the motion to dismiss, the response to the motion to dismiss. So I would definitely study these four cases in the same way that the broader crypto community studies the Howey test and the Howey case, the original Howey case, because I think it's important to see what happened and understand how what you're building is different from what happened in these cases. Let me talk about these four. Hopefully we'll get some lessons learned from them, and then I'll talk about the future. The general framework to think about this, yeah, there's uncertainty in the law, and it's a challenge to be a lawyer advising people just generally about uncertainty in the law. Clients say, what's legal and what's not? Tell me the lines, and I'll follow them, and then everything will be all right. And then lawyers come back and they say, well, on the one hand, on the other hand. Not because they want to, but because the law changes and the law is uncertain. But that problem is somewhat manageable for the most part in business law, except when it comes to crypto. When it comes to crypto, it's much harder, especially under the current environment where you have agencies that are politically charged to kind of want to kill crypto and to cut corners and expand the reach of doctrines as much as they possibly can, because the overall political environment for the current administration in the United States is kill crypto. I think a helpful way to look at it is under these four different zones I'm offering today: presumptively legal, presumptively illegal, clear precedent in those two. And then in the middle, two different areas on each side of the line. Gray areas, there are circuit splits, there's unclear regulatory guidance. And then rogue prosecutor risk, which is how I would describe, for the most part, the four cases I'm talking about. Something that four cases I'm talking about today are all within the rogue prosecutor risk, which is to say something that is pretty clear under the average banking and securities lawyer's reading of the law exceeds the agency or the DOJ's authority, but they're bringing the case anyway. So we're in rogue prosecutor land, which is difficult because, I'll tell you about what's in the indictments. I'll tell you about what's in the filings. That doesn't mean the government's going to win on those points. I think for the purposes of today's risk management exercise, we assume that they will win on what they claim the law is. I think it's so important, the work that Peter Van Valkenburg and Coin Center and Jerry Breeder are doing to fight this. It's so important. The amicus briefs we've gotten from Blockchain Association, which ECC is a part of, those things are essential. I love that stuff. And I've been involved in one of the amicus briefs against the Tornado Cash, sanction, not their criminal case. Those things are so important. But for the purposes of my risk management exercise, just assume for a moment that all that loses, which I hope doesn't happen. But assume it loses and develop risk management guidance in response to that worst world scenario. So where we are now, Zcash is doing what it does, is building for the right reasons. First of all, let's start there. We're building a private layer one. It's just a private transaction enabling version of Bitcoin. No one in the culture of the Zcash community is not to make the kind of, shit posting jokes, honestly, that the samurai guys were doing, right? We don't do that. And I think that we've had leaders who've done a very good job in Jack and Josh and Zuko, who are leading the culture. It's not okay in the Zcash community to kind of like joke about crime or something. We don't do that. And sometimes just a joke or a ribald comment about that claims something that's not even true can be used against you in court. So first of all, the culture of communication, how we communicate what we do, is one focused on the Fourth Amendment, one focused on privacy, one focused on privacy as consent, one focused on privacy as safety and security, one focused on, and this is an important narrative, and a part of what we believe, privacy as an element of national security. So we're doing what we're doing for the right reasons. It's also the case that, and I think this is very important, we as a community are relying upon the fact that criminals just don't use Zcash. That just doesn't happen. That's not to say that we would suddenly become an illegal venture if that changed, because that's not true. Because criminals use Bitcoin with some frequency. That doesn't make building on Bitcoin illegal. But it just helps that it's also true right now, as we all are building and looking to the future, that criminals don't use Zcash. We can rely on, and we have knowledge of as a community, the fact that a report from the RAND Institute looked at, surveyed extensively dark web vendors that sell drugs online, and Zcash is not featured there. It's mostly Bitcoin and to some extent Monero. And that's not a slide on either one of those things, but it's just something that we rely on. It's also true that New York Department of Financial Services was vocally supportive of Zcash being listed on an NYDFS registered firm. So that's where we are now. In the future, it's possible for some builders in the future to get into the rogue prosecutor risk zone, depending on the design of what they build. So we have to think about that. So let's get into cases and learn some lessons from these cases. The first one I want to talk about is U.S. versus Sterling. This case is very personal to me because I got to know Roman Sterling. I spent about 30 hours with him in prison when I was an expert on his case. He's a nice guy. He was early to Bitcoin, and he did not run Bitcoin fog, in my opinion, not at all. And I think this is an important case because it's an innocent man who's looking at a lot of time. One of the lessons of that case is the government has abused conspiracy. Two of the four charges were conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitter. One of the things in developing that conspiracy argument that the prosecution claimed during closing argument was that a single act in furtherance of Bitcoin fog, even purchase of the domain bitcoinfog.com in 2011 was sufficient for conspiracy to commit money laundering, sufficient for conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitter. That's the only thing they could come close to associating with Roman was the purchase of that domain. They had a trace from his KYC Mt. Gox account through a number of intermediaries that they had no attributing information about, including Bitcoin addresses, including Orem Exchange, and including Liberty Reserve. And they had no attributing information at any of those. But anyway, they did have a trace that went to purchase of the ClearNet domain back in 2011. Roman said on the stand, I don't remember if I purchased that domain or not. I worked on a lot of projects, open source, as a kind of a non-dev with lots of other non-devs. I don't remember whether I purchased it or not. And that was the only thing they came close to associating him with that project. And they convicted him on that basis. So conspiracy is a broad tent, and it helps the government to kind of eliminate the statute of limitations as a defense, because the government says, well, you're part of the conspiracy back in 2011, you're part of a continued conspiracy, therefore we'll just ignore the statute of limitations. Now, conspiracy to some extent is kind of putting where the government gets to play on God mode. To charge conspiracy, the government has to demonstrate that there's an agreement to operate an illegal enterprise together. And they only need to show that one member of the conspiracy committed one act in furtherance of the criminal conspiracy. They don't have to show that you knew that the act was criminal, that constituted a part of the agreement. They only have to show that you agreed to commit an act, and whether or not you knew it, that act itself was criminal. Willful blindness is not a defense. In fact, this is quite the opposite. Juries get an instruction that willful blindness can constitute intent. So in other words, if you know your platform is being used by criminals and you make it easier for criminals to use whatever protocol you're building, that is sufficient to constitute intent for an agreement for conspiracy purposes, if the other elements of the conspiracy are met. Other aspects of the Sterling case, the government, one of the frustrating things was the government kept using some language from the front page of Bitcoin Fog. And the front page said something to the effect of, this protocol is designed so that the proper authorities can't trace you. And the government kind of spun that to the jury as, see, what he means by that language is U.S. DOJ, FBI prosecuting fentanyl and child sexual abuse material. And that's one way to understand that language, but it's not the only way, certainly. That language of evading proper authorities could mean Russia, could mean China, could mean Venezuela, could mean, abuse of human rights protesters. It could mean a lot of things, as this community knows. So the government has a way of taking language out of context, which is why one of the things I mentioned earlier in the discussion was it's so important to be very careful about language, and to just be honest about the fact that we're building for the right reasons. There's also a venue overreach issue, but I offer a link to a podcast about this that I did with some of the lawyers on Law of Code about the case. If you want to learn more about it, I'm working on the appeal, and I'm so devoted to this case. I'll talk to you about anybody in the Zcash community about the Sterling on case until I can't talk anymore. All right, let's talk about Tornado Cash. Peter V is the expert on the Tornado Cash case, and he's been working on it and doing important work. You know, I think it's important to study this. One of the reasons why I describe this as overreach and describe this as in the zone of rogue prosecutor is, if you saw it made the rounds on crypto Twitter, the government's response to a motion to dismiss in the case made some outlandish arguments, one of which was where the government claimed that, look, despite the fact that guidance from FinCEN in 2019 indicated that being a non-custodial protocol meant that you're not likely to be a money transmitter. We don't care about that because we get to bring criminal law, and criminal law is not bound by FinCEN guidance. So we're just going to come after you anyway. That filing was widely panned among crypto lawyers. Among crypto lawyers who were former DOJ, former government lawyers, former Treasury Department AML experts, panned that and were highly, highly critical of that filing from the government. I don't know if it'll survive. I don't know if all those arguments they put in there will survive. I hope not. I can't imagine they will. But it's useful to study that to see just what the government's capable of. There are obviously some factors in this case that kind of complicate it a bit. The burn of the admin, you know, I wish the facts were perfect, right? For the legal win and for the precedent. I hope we get out of a win in this case. The facts aren't perfect because the burn of the admin key came a little late. There was the relayers, the DAO, the torn token that kind of complicate the argument, the pure argument about code is free speech. I think the government would come after them even if the facts were perfect, which is why this fight is so important. But some of those factors complicate the defense, and so it's important to be mindful of them. Samurai Wallet. So, I mean, if you're in the privacy community, you probably followed Samurai Wallet's Twitter. They play a little fast and loose on Twitter. I still, though, haven't seen a single post in which Samurai folks demonstrate an intent to further a specific crime. That's not in the indictment. It's not contained in the indictment at all. But still, the government has kind of twisted the general kind of, I don't know, joking about crime or whatever language from Twitter. They put it in the indictment, they try to spin it, and they're going to try to spin it in front of the jury. But there's not a single post from Samurai that says, you know, like one of the allegations is that bad proceeds of the Badger DAO hack went to Whirlpool. I haven't seen a post that says, oh, yay, we're so excited that happened, right? That doesn't exist. So I haven't seen anything that shows specific intent to a specific crime. But anyway, it's a lesson in being careful about public communication. This is also another case where the operator of CoinJoin, the wallet and Whirlpool and the coordinator for Whirlpool run by these guys did not take custody. It just kind of coordinated signatures for CoinJoins. But the government claims that the Whirlpool was sort of like the money laundering operation, the unlicensed money transmitter. And these two defendants were in a conspiracy with that non-entity money laundering operation. It's sort of the theory that the government is developing there. U.S. versus Raul Rodriguez. This is another important case to keep in mind. And there are cases like it for local Monero. A big whale user of local Bitcoin in peer-to-peer transactions is deemed to be an unlicensed money transmitter. And I don't know the facts because the facts weren't fleshed out because this was a settlement. I don't know the full facts. The government claims he had knowledge that counterparties to the trades were trying to launder the proceeds of criminal activity, of illicit activity. I don't know that that's true because the government says a lot of nonsensical bullshit in DOJ press releases. But look, they don't like whale users of peer-to-peer platforms. And one of the things the government will say is part of the element of being an unlicensed money transmitter is that you're doing so for a profit, operating it as a business for a profit. And if you're an individual whale who likes to speculate in Bitcoin or Monero, and you're buying peer-to-peer, you're not buying at the market price, right? Because there's no oracle that goes to the local platform, the peer-to-peer platform. So you're going to be, but there's a substantial spread in those transactions. So the government will just take that natural fact of the peer-to-peer platform and say, see, they're making a profit on their purchases and sales. Therefore, they're operating a business. Therefore, unlicensed money transmitter, and they get you for, 10 years, and you settle for 5, as was the case here. Just an abuse of power in my mind, but it's a threat vector to keep in mind. It's also useful to read these cases to get anonymity, kind of OPSEC guidance, and see some of the touch points, real world touch points that the government uses. Look, if there's anything that exists that can be subpoenaed, it will be subpoenaed. And if any information tracing to you can be found there, it will be found. And the other thing is that the government can now compel biometric access to your phone. So if you've got your password protector on your phone, they'll put your phone in front of your face, then they'll get into your password protector, and then they can get everything, right? So just be aware that that's how that works. And let's not be smug about these cases, because the level of focus keeps growing for each case that comes along. I like Star Wars references. There's 2 different types of actors in the rebellion in Star Wars. There's Mon Mothma, who has a coalition, who is very compliant. Then there's Saw Gerrera, who in the movie kind of does his own thing and doesn't coordinate with anyone, and probably hates Mon Mothma and Rebel Alliance as much as he hates the Empire. But I guess he hates the Empire more, but he doesn't get along with anyone. Doesn't coordinate with anyone. Doesn't receive support from anyone. He's just a guerrilla kind of warrior on his own, out there, lone wolf. So, those are the 2 different types. And if you're a recipient of the Dev Fund, you're me and you, if you're doxxed, if your real name was used to register for Zcon at any point, then you're on the left side of this. You're Mon Mothma and me, with me at Rebel Alliance HQ. And that means there's compliance we have to do as we build. That's just a fact. As a user, you can hope for a kind of a Saw Gerrera type to emerge, but you can't coordinate with him. You just can't. One lesson to draw: Bitcoin core developers were never charged with conspiracy. If you take the logic of conspiracy to its utmost, you get to absurd things, right? Like building a road, you were conspiracy to commit murder because a murderer used the road, right? But it's about foreseeability, and it's about what you have a collective agreement to do. So Bitcoin core developers never faced liability because they were not directly working with Bitcoin mixer developers. Ethereum Foundation wasn't part of any of the Tornado Cash cases because they never acted in concert with the developers of Tornado Cash. So that's a lesson for us. If someone wants to build a custodial, programmable smart contract of some kind in a world where Zcash is programmable in the future, we can't coordinate with them. I'm really appreciative of Zcash community grants for their work. Appreciative of Jack and ZF, appreciative of ECC. We've been talking variously about, it's a sad world where we have to spend so much time talking about hiring lawyers, but I think we should. I think we will. And I think we'll get some guidance for the community as a whole that'll help everyone feel a little more safe and secure about what we're building and how we're building it. And I'm not suggesting that even the ZSAs gets us into the rogue prosecutor square, because as I understand the current design of ZSAs, it's just like ERC20s on Zcash, which is not in any way reasonably inferred to be an intent to develop something with someone doing something illegal. But I'm just saying, one outgrowth of what people might do in the future, one day, if Zcash is programmable and has smart contract features, could be something that seems to mirror the design of Tornado Cash. And if that happens and people decide to do that, we can't be a part of that. So build his Rebel Alliance headquarters and kind of let Saw Gerrera emerge if that wants to emerge, but don't support it, don't help it, don't coordinate with it, don't act in concert with that. We can't stop it. We can't coordinate with it. We can't support it. That's it. That's all I got. Questions? Okay, I see a chat function. Maybe has some questions in it. Okay. Some questions that are specific that might be better off as questions to include to the lawyers that are being that are anticipated to be supported by the Zcash community grants. Grant for this. So I'll leave those there and maybe get in touch with Jason McGee and or Jack or me or whatever to ask those questions, and we'll add those into the communications to go out to attorneys. There's another question about U.S. law as being a kind of a model for other countries. What can we do to anticipate that? So one of the weird things about the Sterling case is that it wasn't clear there was any. The government never proved any specific touch points to the United States. Roman Sterlingoff was, even if you believe the government's claim that Roman Sterlingoff ran Bitcoin Fog, he lived in Sweden. He worked in Sweden. He did everything in Sweden. Bitcoin Fog was, something that could be found on the dark web. The government never found the servers for Bitcoin Fog. They never de-anonymized Bitcoin Fog. So I don't know where the servers are, but presumably they weren't in the United States. But the U.S. government still claimed jurisdiction over this solely because an IRS agent in D.C. accessed Bitcoin Fog, sent a little Bitcoin to Bitcoin Fog, and sent a memo to the chat function associated with the online website that said, "Hey, I just sent you some Bitcoin that I got from selling Molly. Is this a good place to mix the proceeds of illicit activities?" Very kind of a narkish kind of phrasing. And solely from that act by an IRS agent, the government said, "Oh, we have venue in the U.S. to prosecute." So assume U.S. DOJ is the bear in the room globally. They will assert extraterritorial jurisdiction no matter where you are for basically these four actions. These four causes of action: money laundering, conspiracy to commit money laundering, unlicensed money transmitter, conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitter. Going overseas doesn't protect you from that, no matter where you are. That's unfortunate and it's unfair, but that's the reality. I am at my time. I don't see any more questions, so I guess that is all. Unless anyone else, do we have a coordinator or moderator who wants to cut me off? Yeah, I get the thumbs up. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for everything you do. Here's to the builders in Zcash. You're the most important, right? If you watch Star Trek, the captain's the one who always gets the ship in trouble, but the person who saves everything is the engineering team, Mr. Scotty. So thanks to the builders. Thanks to the engineers. Thanks for what you do. It's our job to protect you and support you. Be well, everyone. Privacy is normal.
Hola, ¿qué tal todos? Estamos acá en ZconV en Barcelona.
Nos reunimos hoy con la ZconV. El conocimiento es la voz, uniendo a todos desde el amanecer. Zcash avanza con mucho que hacer. La privacidad y la seguridad son la clave en esta conferencia, donde todos tienen su llave. Desde cada rincón la comunidad se activa con ideas brillantes.
Primera vez que estamos en Europa y estamos como disfrutando todo lo que pasa en la ciudad,
En Barcelona también.
todo lo que la gente hace afuera de las instalaciones, y ha sido muy chévere estar aquí. Y además, como nos han tratado, la gente se sorprende que volamos muchas horas desde Venezuela y nos han tratado súper.
Súper, qué cool. Además que lo logramos hablar con Ian en español, así que dijimos antes de llegar, esto va a estar primera entrevista
para mí en español y también para ZFAV Club, creo, como de podcast.
Ajá.
Pero sí, estamos hablando en español, si en el Spanglish, entonces si en un momento no nos entendimos, vamos a cambiar a inglés, so it's going to be a little broken, pero vamos a hablar en Spanglish.
Robman nos va a ayudar con la magia.
Hey, perfecto, Roman, gracias por ayudarnos.
Mencionaste algo importante, Ian. Hablaste de ZConV. Ya cumplió un año.
Sí.
How do you feel? ¿Cómo te sientes?
Para mí, ZconV es como un experiment, ¿me entiendes? Es como una cosa que construimos para crear una nueva forma de recibir Zcash, para trabajar en el ecosistema y para entrar como en comunidad. Y para mí tenemos
Palabra clave, comunidad.
comunidad. Y tenemos este ejemplo de construir comunidades en Zcash que es distinto que las otras formas. Y ahora tenemos información, entonces podemos, ¿cómo se dice? Like, improve it. Like, sí, tenemos un ejemplo y podemos construir más modelos y podemos crearlos y crear más modelos para, ¿cómo se dice? Invitar más personas para colaborar con nosotros, para trabajar en el ecosistema. Entonces, en mi opinión, fue un experiment, fue una prueba y ahora...
Una prueba que salió muy bien.
Sí, salió muy bien y ahora tenemos la información y la confianza para darlo más dinero de los grants program, de los block reward y esa cosa para ¿cómo se dice? Like, grow it.
Para que
Sí.
para que sea en comunidad. Es impresionante porque por lo menos en Venezuela la gente está muy pendiente de todo lo que está haciendo el ZconV. En Venezuela toda la comunidad siempre está como pendiente de cómo puedo aportar o qué puedo aprender también dentro del ZconV y es fantástico porque muchas veces entramos a comunidades y no sabemos a dónde buscar información. Y en el ZconV está todo.
Sí, está todo y ya también ZconV como un sitio de información que es más básico y necesitamos los sitios más básicos porque gente nueva no puede entender como todas las cosas de que estamos hablando, como Zero Knowledge Proofs y la tecnología de privacidad, cómo funciona en blockchain. Es muy difícil entender para una persona nueva, entonces necesitamos más sitios más básicos para personas normales.
Todos transitamos por eso que dice Ian, es decir, todos cuando empezamos a entender la tecnología blockchain, pasamos por ahí, por entender lo básico, el concepto, Satoshi Nakamoto,
Sí.
una blockchain, o sea, es inevitable pasar, los Zcashers, los que se unen a Zcash, es inevitable pasar por el ZconV,
Sí,
es una ruta obligada.
Creo que hay algo interesante
de acuerdo con eso.
que esto lo podemos conectar con Zcash, porque la idea también de Zcash es que sea un podcast en español, pero que sea sencillo, que no sea un podcast técnico, porque queríamos decir a la gente, bueno, esta información la puedes consumir sin importar el nivel de conocimiento que tengas dentro de lo que son las criptomonedas, la Web3 o cualquier cosa que esté sucediendo en el ecosistema. Entonces, creo que ahí el ZconV y lo que estamos haciendo también dentro de Zcash tiene bastantes...
Sí, porque eso es una buena idea, porque tenemos podcasts por la persona más técnicos. Entonces, tiene como el Zero Knowledge Podcast con Ana Ross, en donde las personas que quieren saber más de la tecnología en un nivel más advanced y más difícil, más técnico, esta persona puede encontrar ese podcast de Zero Knowledge FM y otros y escuchar estos y podemos tener nuestro podcast para contenido más básico.
Correcto. Cuéntanos, tengo esta curiosidad, ¿por qué manejas también el español? ¿Que has vivido aquí en Latinoamérica? Bueno, aquí en Latinoamérica. ¿Viviste allá en Latinoamérica un poquito?
Cuando estaba creciendo,
De Argentina.
No, yo llevé un viaje a Argentina para entrenar como un equipo de fútbol allá.
Ok.
Y empecé aprendiendo español por ese viaje. Y después de eso yo tenía mucha suerte porque yo fui a escuelas internacionales. Yo vi en otros países, como Kuwait, cerca de Saudi Arabia, era Kuwait. Y yo fui a una escuela nacional en Inglaterra y yo fui a una universidad por jugar fútbol y soccer en los Estados Unidos. Y yo tenía mucha suerte porque siempre tenía amigos que eran de países hispanos, latinos, en Latinoamérica, España. Entonces siempre tenía la oportunidad para hablar español. Y cuando estaba en colegio, yo jugué en un equipo de soccer con muchos tipos de Argentina. Yo llevé viajes a Argentina. Y después de eso, conocí a mi novia y ella de Puerto Rico y hablamos español en casa. Entonces yo puedo practicar todo el tiempo. Entonces, sí.
algo que me pasó muy curioso, porque bueno, también de esto se tratan estas entrevistas, es que cuando vi a ella la primera vez, lo saludé en inglés, en mi mal inglés, y de una vez me saludó en español, y yo, ¿qué?
Sí, sí, mucha gente no sabe. Yo hice una charla así con voces en Brasil y yo también puedo leer y entender portugués, pero es muy difícil para hablar, porque yo no tengo la oportunidad para practicar esa cosa.
Claro, claro.
Y cuando estaba preparando por esa charla, yo fui a hacerlo en portugués, pero cuando estaba como practicando con el grupo, ellos me dijeron, Ian, ¿quieres español? Porque tu español mejor que tu portugués. Y yo lo hice en español, entonces yo hice una charla en ZconV, está en YouTube, si quieren verlo. Sí, hice esto en español también.
No, tienes fans en Venezuela, tienes tus fans.
Tengo mi fans, muchas gracias.
Por supuesto, el club de fans. Sí, es correcto, es correcto.
Pero sí, para mí es una bendición para tener la oportunidad de aprender español y ahora paso un montón de tiempo en Puerto Rico, entonces tengo la oportunidad para hablar con mi novia y su familia, su amigo, entonces puedo seguir practicando, pero sí.
Volviendo con el tema del Sec Hub, aunque entiendo que ya tú no estás directamente en el Sec Hub, o sí lo sigues dirigiendo.
No, estoy como si
Ya tu hijo creció, lo dejaste que siga creciendo.
Sí, como... Cuando empecé haciéndolo, pensé que, voy a crear este sitio y esta plataforma para invitar nuevos miembros de la comunidad, para ayudar con creándolo, con el contenido, con todos. Y yo no puedo hacer esto solo, porque yo tenía mi trabajo también en el Electric Coin Company. Y yo no tenía tiempo para construir un sitio nuevo con mis responsabilidades de mi trabajo. Y cuando estaba creándolo, yo me pensé, necesito personas nuevas para hacerlo. Y algunos miembros de la comunidad empezaron ayudándome. Y después, como 8 o 9 meses, hice la decisión, ¿cómo se dice? To give it away, para darlo a esa persona. Fue un grupo de 3 personas. Y ellos recibieron un grant de Zcash Community Grants para pagar por sus servicios y su tiempo.
Claro.
Pero también tenemos el Community Bounty Program. Entonces, porque es un sitio completo, es un resource muy importante en la comunidad de Zerocash. Entonces, 3 personas no tienen el tiempo suficiente para hacer todo, entonces necesitamos una comunidad para hacer todos. Y en esa plataforma, ahora tenemos la oportunidad por personas nuevas en la comunidad para contribuir, para trabajar en todas las cosas que necesitamos en la comunidad, porque son importantes, como newsletters, podcasts, design por los sitios de web. Y ellos pueden recibir Zcash directamente del block reward. No tienen que comprarlo en Centralized Exchange, como en Binance y algo como así. Pueden trabajar y tiene acceso directo del block reward. Para mí es muy importante. Y ahora mi trabajo y mi role,
¿Tu rol?
mi rol en Zcash, en ZconV, sorry, es para ayudar cuando puedo. Cuando puedo. Puedo hablar con el core team de nuevas ideas, de...
Un consultor.
El consultor, sí, puede ser. Pero mi sueño para ZconV es para ser una plataforma más de Zcash. Zcash es la fundación, es como la gorra, pero puede ser más. Por ejemplo, podemos crear sitios y plataformas como ZconV en otras comunidades, como Nomada, como Bonombro, Railgun, Aztec en Ethereum. Y cuando estamos construyendo esas comunidades y esas plataformas, cuando están haciendo los bounty programs y trabajando, Zcash puede estar el dinero de transacciones. Entonces podemos crear nuevos sitios y nuevas formas de educación por otras comunidades y otros ecosistemas, pero en la fundación y en la corra de todo el proyecto, cuando los contributors llegan para hacer trabajo, ellos van a recibir Zcash. Entonces, en ese model, en ese ejemplo, Zcash ya está el dinero de Sí,
Es una forma de impulsar el uso del SEC, de Zcash, pero también es un tema de descentralización, que se pueda autosustentar, entiendo.
sí.
Creo que también no solamente de sustentabilidad, sino también de oportunidades para otras personas que tienen un talento y lo pueden poner al servicio de la comunidad dentro del Sec Hub. Porque de hecho en Venezuela hablamos mucho de esto y cada vez que alguien ingresa a la comunidad les recomendamos inmediatamente que vaya al Sec Hub porque va a ser muy sencillo
Sí, sí.
conseguir información y luego si sabes que tienes algún talento, allí probablemente haya una tarea que pueda ser asignada a ti y lo que tú dices puedes recibir SEC a cambio de
Sí.
las tareas que estés ejecutando.
Sí, eso es muy importante porque cuando creé ZconV, yo no tenía ninguna idea que personas de Venezuela fueran a usarlo para contribuir y hacer trabajo para X sistema. Yo lo creé solamente fue una idea. Y como the implementación de la idea fue muy distinto que la idea que tenía en mi mente en los años pasados. Pero eso es muy importante porque hicimos como un survey. ¿Cómo se dice survey en español?
Una encuesta.
Sí, hicimos esto y personas de Venezuela lo llenaron y lo contestaron las preguntas que teníamos. Y personas estaban diciéndonos, yo no tengo ninguna manera para comprar Zerocash por razones varias. ZconV es la única manera que puedo obtener Zerocash. Y para mí, cuando yo leí esto, yo estaba pensando, Dios mío, qué cool ese modelo, que persona nueva de la comunidad, pero recibir ZEC directamente.
Pero lo mismo sucedió y sucede con Free2C.
Sí,
Conflictos sí también.
de hecho, cuando yo entré en la comunidad, yo sabía que podía generar contenido porque es lo que hago siempre en mi trabajo.
Sí.
Yo decía, bueno, ¿en qué plataforma puedo empezar a generar contenido? E inmediatamente me dijeron, o vas al Sec Hub o vas a Free2C. Actualmente estoy generando contenido en Free2C y eso, por supuesto, hace que tengas algunas donaciones, puedas tener Sec y puedas vivir la experiencia de no tener que comprarlo. Bueno, porque hay una realidad en Venezuela que es una realidad de cotidiana. Entonces, eso es importante también para que la gente entienda que el talento es valorado dentro de las comunidades y es algo que nos gusta como repetirle a las personas que entran a la comunidad. Oye, si estás aquí y tienes un talento, ese talento se va a valorar de alguna manera.
Sí.
Buenísimo. Esas
Perdón.
oportunidades.
Sí, también. Y tenemos ahora, en mi opinión, todos son pruebas. Todos son pruebas. Tenemos Free2Z, tenemos ZconV, y ahora tenemos el Zcash Foundation Minor Grants Program, y tenemos más maneras para entrar al ecosistema, contribute y recibir Zerocash como en cambio por los servicios, ¿me entiende? Y sí, exactamente. Y ahora necesitamos ver esos modelos, esas pruebas y construir más. Porque es una manera muy buena, muy productiva para descentralizar Zerocash, the Development Fund de Zerocash y la ecosistema en general. Y si lo descentralizamos, vamos a tener más resilience. ¿Cómo se dice resilience?
Resiliencia.
Resilience del ecosistema. Y para mí es muy importante y estoy aquí en este fin de para hablar de esas cosas.
Qué bueno.
Tengo una pregunta que no quiero que se me olvide. En virtud de lo que estás diciendo, ¿qué le recomiendas a una persona que llega al ecosistema y solamente está viendo, pero no está haciendo? ¿Qué le recomendarías a esa persona que tiene un talento, pero que todavía no se ha animado a hacer algo?
Muy buena pregunta.
Necesitamos opiniones distintas en todos los como aspects en Zerocash. En mi opinión, hay un talento y hay una cosa que todos pueden hacer, ¿entiende? Nunca tenía la idea para hacer como un pottery class de cómo construir cositas con adobo y algo como así y así, y enfocado en Zerocash. Y Madison tiene esa idea para hacerlo en San Diego. Es una idea bastante rara, nueva, pero sí, funciona. Entonces, cuando enfocamos en descentralizar el ecosistema, todos van a tener grupos en que pueden entrar y hacer...
Interés, digamos.
Sí.
cada persona dentro del
Sí,
ecosistema.
y hacer algo, porque todos de nosotros tenemos talentos distintos y cosas que podemos hacer. Por ejemplo, cuando estaba haciendo el ZConV por la primera vez, yo no podría hacer como los visual designs y gente en Venezuela, sí, y como Ericsson con sus vídeos de las noticias. Buena idea, qué buena idea, Zach Willy, qué buena idea para hacer, porque todo está en inglés y todos los tweets están en inglés y gente no puede leer inglés porque no entiende y no hablan. Ok, voy a crear un vídeo explicando que todos están diciendo. Entonces, si vos tenés una idea, lo hágalo, porque no sabemos si es una buena idea o mala, y después como 4 semanas, 6 semanas, 2, 3 meses de haciéndolo, si tiene como tracción, traction,
Buenos resultados.
buenos resultados, sí, tenés esto de motivación para hacer más y potentially tal vez puede recibir un poco de dinero para hacer ese trabajo y esa cosa. Pero no funciona, esto es bien, eso es bien también, porque eso te dice, ok, eso no funciona, que, what else, what other ideas, qué otras ideas tenés. Como necesitamos hacer muchas cosas, tenemos que fallar, tenemos que hacer todas y fallar, y después fallando podemos decirnos, ok, eso no funcionó, pero tengo más ideas para hacer y voy a hacer esto ahora.
Ian acaba de resumir ahora, ¿estás de acuerdo conmigo? En lo que siempre le decimos a los que llegan nuevos a la comunidad de Zcash en español, que primero vas a dar y luego vas a recibir. Hay gente que llega y dicen, quiero invertir, ¿cuánto voy a ganar? No, en Zcash primero das, primero apoyas, primero aportas de forma voluntaria. Mira, yo sé editar videos, mira, yo sé hacer páginas web, mira, yo sé hacer meetups. Ok, aporta y después el dinero, como dices tú, Ian, el dinero...
Como en criptomonedas tenemos como resistance, en criptomonedas en esas comunidades tiene que ganar como confianza y trust.
Claro, darse a conocer.
Sí,
Saber
y no puede entrar un Discord o algo y decir, quiero hacer el trabajo ahora, págame. Tener que, ¿cómo se dice? Earn. Tener que ganar la confianza de la comunidad y después ganando la confianza, puedes después ganando la confianza, puede empezar trabajando y colaborando que de todo, porque tenemos cosas que necesitamos ayuda. Cuando tengo cosas en mi trabajo que estoy haciendo y no sé si tengo tiempo suficiente para hacer otras cosas. Entonces, si está entrando en la comunidad y quiere apoyarnos, la mejor cosa que puede hacer es hacer cosas sin permisión. Crear contenido, crear designs, crear ciertos sitios nuevos y después creándolo, mostrarnos y después mostrándonos, vamos a verlo, vamos a estudiarlo y decir, ok, esa es buena, no esa es buena, y vamos a usar esto y no vamos a usar esto, y después podemos darte como feedback, información en que puedas hacer en la próxima y también ganas nuestra confianza.
un voto de confianza, ibas a decir.
Que tenemos que empezar a trabajar en las comunidades de manera desinteresada, en ese sentido, porque es lo que comenta Rubén, muchas veces a nosotros nos ha pasado y lo hemos visto dentro de la comunidad, cómo gano dinero aquí. No, es cómo me gano la confianza, cómo creo reputación aquí, y eso es lo que va a hacer que el dinero de alguna manera llegue a través de las tareas y las oportunidades.
Sí.
En muchos espacios del ecosistema, porque no es solamente el ZconV, hablamos de free to see, hablamos de algunas otras cosas, los bounties o algunas cosas que también te generan algún tipo de ingreso.
Sí, y también, tenemos un supply cap de 21 millones de Zerocash.
Ajá.
Y necesitamos crear modelos que podemos ganar dinero sin la ayuda del dev fund
Correcto.
y coins y monedas nuevas. Entonces, en un día, cuando gente entra al ecosistema, tienen que crear productos y servicios que queremos. Programas y comunidades, no, siempre va a estar programas para ayudar gente que no tienen que deberían hacer, pero la mejor manera es para llevar sus talentos adentro del ecosistema, hacer como... Y después de eso, ustedes van a ver if it's valuable, si tiene valor o no.
Es correcto, es correcto.
Sí.
Una pregunta cambiando de tema ya para ir terminando. Ian, ¿conoces Venezuela? ¿Has ido a Venezuela? ¿Y cuándo vas a ir o no quieres ir?
¿Puedo ir?
Ok,
Sí.
bueno,
Cerca, porque de Puerto Rico puedes llevar un vuelo a Colombia, después de Colombia a Venezuela.
Fans de Venezuela tienen que escribir para que Ian una visita ya.
Ian en Venezuela.
Dale, sí, es posible, si quieren hacerlo.
Nada, Ian, gracias por tu tiempo. Es un gusto conocerte y un gusto estar compartiendo aquí en la ZconV.
Gracias, mucho gusto. Gracias por su tiempo también y mucho gusto y un placer para conocerles.
Y nos vamos, ahora sí nos vamos a tomar la foto con Ian.
Sí, un foto, dale, perfecto. Awesome. Hello, everyone. Again, checking back in from ZconV, recording a few of these interviews just to give the Zcash community an update on various things that people are working on and various ideas in the space. I'm here with Rene Vergara, who has been working on Zigo, and I think we could just use this as like a quick 10 to 15 minute opportunity to share a little bit more about yourself and the things you've been working on. Maybe the best way is an intro, and yeah, what's your background, what got you interested in Zcash, and obviously building on Zigo.
For me, actually, Zcash was my gateway into crypto. I've always been interested in coding and also working with privacy technology, like more from the user side. And that's kind of how I stumbled into Zcash. And I really, I couldn't believe that there was already the technology. Involved in the community, and as part of that, I sort of kind of kept nagging at me that there was this gap in the ecosystem about being able to pay with Zec in an everyday basis. And at some point, they just decided, maybe I try to do something about it. And I made a little prototype, and it kind of worked. And I shared it with a few people, and they said, yeah, and that kind of led us also into the direction of trying to integrate with existing applications. So now we kind of have both kind of like a point of sale that you can use on a brick and mortar face-to-face, and also ways to integrate with applications that you can send invoices and get paid in Zec, or you can create e-commerce shops and get paid in Zec directly. So far, that has been the main goal, is to implement a way that makes it very easy for a vendor to start accepting Zec. Trying to automate and smooth out all the friction that you could be having due to, there's been a lot of conversation about the UX and the wallets and all of that. And we're working to try to remove that friction away from the process of just exchanging for Zec.
Awesome. I think that's super valuable. So, I mean, obviously, it is a bit of a gap, because if you go even within this event, and this isn't being critical, it's just like we're on that path towards having this future state, like giving vendors the ability here to be able to accept Zcash so we can go around and spend it here within the conference, I think in a future state would be really cool. Zigo could be potentially the thing that drives that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I've been discussing that with Zakpek as well, because he has a similar idea of bringing together the vendors and bringing together the users, the people that have Zec and are willing to spend it, and creating a tool that helps, makes it easier, reduces the technical curve that people need to start doing it. I think is going to help with that.
No, for sure. So at a high level, just so we can again set the context, Zigo is a application that allows people to implement the ability to create invoices and accept Zcash for payments in physical brick and mortar stores and online e-commerce stores potentially.
Yes.
Does it have its own specific hardware? So if I want to use Zigo at my coffee shop in X City, do I need to buy a specific hardware, or it can implement, or is the idea to integrate it with current existing point of sale systems?
Well, right now we design it so it's completely hardware agnostic. You can run it on anything that can run a modern web browser. That's part of why we chose to make it an iOS app or an Android app, because it kind of like sets us free from those ecosystems of the app stores. If you have a browser, you get to Zego. One of the challenges with integrating with existing point of sale systems is that they all do everything they can to become walled gardens. And that is always going to be a challenge because they want to lock the vendors in. They want them to use the proprietary hardware, the proprietary software, their own payment processor so they can take the fees off of it. And I think that that's always going to be a challenge. And one of the things that I've been thinking of is how can we, so we have Zego as a point of sale. How can we also add potentially some connection to traditional payment rails so the vendor can still have both options, but we do it from our side where we are not a walled garden. If you have a customer that walks in with a credit card, go ahead, serve their customer, but they still have the opportunity to also accept.
100%. So if I'm like a vendor in X store, or I own like a brick and mortar coffee shop, I would have a device that would be on the Zego web browser creating invoices and accepting Zcash. And I could also have like another point of sale system where if I need to accept credit cards and cash or etc.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. I think that's a really good approach because I think people always want to lessen that barrier to having to adopt things. And I think by saying, oh yeah, if you just go on like this X web browser with another device like that, most people have a couple of devices spare that they can use. So I like that approach. What's been the kind of walk me through the process of development? You're currently receiving a grant from the Zcash Community Grants Program. So how long have you been working on that grant? What's been the process of development, and where's Zego at currently today?
So we got our grant approved a little over a year ago. It was late June of last year, and we've worked through most.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Brigner. I'm Vice President of Strategic Alliances at Electric Coin Company. Before that, I was head of U.S. policy and strategic advocacy. It's been about a little over 2 years now, going on 3. This is my 3rd ZCon. Just such a privilege and honor to be a part of this community and to be in a very special role at Electric Coin Company. And also to be one of the speakers today talking about policy and regulatory issues. All of the other speakers, JW, Peter, John, Kurt, they're all amazing and good friends and heroes of mine. So this is a privilege, and I want to thank you for that. Just as an introduction, in addition to working at Electric Coin Company, I do a very, very part-time role teaching fintech for MBAs at Georgetown University. So I keep just a toe in the academic environment as well. And that's part of the strategic advocacy activity, actually, that we might talk about as we go forward. Okay, so I've got a lot to cover here, and I'm going to try to keep it quite high level because if I go too deep, it's just too much, frankly. I'm going to just give you some key takeaways, policy takeaways from the last year since we did ZCon. I think I did a session like this. So let's go into it. And wow, what a year it has been. And I think that in so many ways, you could say that I'm just getting some questions here. So, okay, all right. Good questions coming through already. Sorry, let's keep them coming. And I'll cover that one in just a minute. So watershed year, yes, it's been an amazing year, I would say, in many ways. And we'll talk about the bad later, but let's focus on the good for just a moment. The Bitcoin ETF approval was just an incredible milestone for the industry. And however you look at that, good or bad, I think that some of us lament that to some degree because it is a sign that Bitcoin is becoming more TradFi and a little bit more captured than I think some of us would like for it to be. But it has just done amazing things for raising the profile of the industry, bringing new investment into the industry, and the fact that the SEC was forced to move that forward is just a huge deal. So overall, a great thing. We've got a lot of bad things behind us too. You know, FTX and other catastrophic failures are in the rearview mirror. A lot of that stuff is being settled. There's a few things that I think are still working their way through bankruptcy proceedings and court proceedings, but a lot of it is behind us. You know, we're getting a lot of the sentencing done for some of those individuals, and you know, it's some of that I kind of hate to see that happen, but it's nice just to get that behind us and move past some of the really bad things that have happened in the industry. Hopefully we don't have more of those. This is a big one. Significant funding has been deployed to support pro-crypto political candidates. And we also have grassroots that are activating. Just this morning, I was reading, I think it's covered in Reuters today, over $100 million is now in super PACs dedicated to placing pro-crypto candidates in certain races. And you've seen organizations like A16Z and Coinbase and others really stand up and put their money into this. And that is a game changer. Whenever it is demonstrated that the crypto industry is important enough and is well funded enough, has enough backing to put this kind of money into political races, we will see a tide change. And I think that there's already, just because the fact that money is there, even it hasn't had the effect yet, it's changed the dynamics in politics broadly. We have some outstanding congressional crypto champions, and they're pushing a lot of legislation forward. We have so many different bills that have been proposed. Some of them have made quite a bit of progress. I'm not going to go into them all now, but you know, we can thank people like Representative Emmer, Patrick McHenry. We've got Senators Gillibrand and Lummis and many others. And just as important, it's their staff. They have great staff, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation as well. We've also had a lot of offensive court cases initiated, and you know, it's really frustrating that we have to go down this path of having court cases be the ultimate decision in policy making, because that's not actually the way it's, you always want the court there as a backstop, but you'd like the policy to be made and then then take it there, not the way it's been working. I think it's been anyway, we'll talk more about those details later too, but at least we are making progress with good court cases that I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so here's the challenges that remain and the new threats that have emerged. So this one, I guess I just threw them all up there. The administration continues to be anti-crypto, and it's just in a huge way. It's extremely aggressive regulation by enforcement from the SEC. Just this week, we heard about a Wells notice to Robinhood. There's been one to Consensus and Uniswap very recently. And these are notices from the Securities and Exchange Commission to these organizations saying that they are preparing to bring suits against them for improperly trading in securities. And of course, this is talking about their crypto businesses for Robinhood, for example. So yeah, and I think you all know this has been going on for a very long time. One thing that is concerning me greatly is this next bullet with the IRS proposed rule requiring unhosted wallet providers to report. And the bottom line is it's a serious threat to self-custody, because if you're an unhosted wallet and you're having to report all of the activity of your users, you're having to collect a lot of information that you don't need to collect, that you wouldn't collect otherwise, and turning the wallet providers basically into brokers. It's a huge overreach, and of course, all of this is being tested, and that's again in the courts and in other ways through regulatory proceedings. There've been some meaningful efforts to move legislation forward, as I mentioned, but unfortunately they've just largely stalled. They may get out of committee, they may get some votes, but ultimately they don't get quite far enough, and we don't have the enough bipartisan support to move anything. And really what has been the biggest concern that I've watched very closely over the last few months is the global conflicts really have raised the issue of illicit finance like it has never been a focus before. And people like Senator Warren have really latched on to this. And there's been a lot of legislation crafted that would, again, threaten self-custody, threaten privacy, and pretty much, in many ways destroy the industry. So these are things that continue to watch closely. And we also have a lot of defensive court cases, both civil and criminal. The criminal ones have been discussed already today. So these court cases, I'm not going to go through these in detail because there's just so many, but the Blockchain Association does a great job of providing summaries of these cases, and I wanted to make them available to you at a high level here, just in case you wanted to have a reference after this presentation. You can see, these are all cases against the SEC brought by the industry, trying to clarify, for instance, with the Blockchain Association, the dealer rule that was recently finalized. I'm sorry, and the status of ETH as a security with consensus. Just so many issues that are currently being litigated offensively, which is good for our industry. And then against other agencies as well. Coin Center, of course, we had Peter on. They're involved in 2 of these cases there that are listed. And of course, the Treasury Tornado Cash case. But there are cases brought by the SEC, and some of these have been going on for a very long time. And I would love to see a win on some of these. I think that would just be an unbelievable game changer for us. And I think it's possible that we might see some of that coming soon, since these things have been hanging out there for so long. These are the ones that are most concerning for us, and I won't go into them because I think they've already been discussed quite a bit. But the fact that we're having criminal cases around this is just highly concerning. So what is our strategy? What have I been doing in Washington, D.C.? I've been working very hard to forge close relationships with influencers. We have limited resources. We don't have a large team of people like some other projects do, like some of the larger projects or some of the exchanges and other entities working in crypto. So I have to be very scrappy, and I have to do things mostly on my own and do a lot of the grunt work, candidly, to make things happen. But I do a lot of activities that I'll describe in a moment to develop close relationships with Hill staff, with other industry leaders, trade associations, think tanks, advocacy groups, and in universities and academics. And a lot of the activity is around convening meetings and curating discussions. And that is something that I think adds a lot of value, because a lot of people, want to elevate their own voice primarily, and they don't take an approach of elevating others. And by taking a strategy of elevating others and helping the industry in general, we are in the mix in a very important way, in that we're actually bringing all the people together, and we have a little bit of a role in curating those discussions as well. And then we get a lot of the credit for being the organization that is bringing people together. So when you don't have all of the resources like some entities to just come in and like, directly dominate a discussion. I think a much better way to be important and to be relevant is to just help everyone else elevate their own voices, and then yours is just part of the mix, and then you get respect for doing that. So that's kind of the strategy that I've been following for quite a while now. So here's the stuff that I've been doing specifically. The pretty good policy for crypto. It's a industry-leading initiative, and it includes a monthly breakfast series. It includes a podcast and special events. Been doing this now since almost the entire time I've been at Electric Coin Company, and it just worked out so nicely. Someone mentioned to me the pretty good privacy breakfast meetings that ECC hosted at events and suggested that we should do something in DC, and that just sounded brilliant to me. So I really ran with that. And especially the monthly breakfast series has just become something that is kind of pivotal here in DC for the crypto policy community. And I work closely with the Blockchain Association on that. I work closely with Coinbase, as well as we just made a switch. I was working at Georgetown, but now it's University of Southern California, and they have a very active and great blockchain research center there. The podcast series, I actually have backed off of that a little bit this year just because of bandwidth. I think many of you know that we welcomed a new baby into the family this year, and over the past few months, trying to get through those first few months is quite a struggle. So I want to get back to that, and I think it's a very important initiative. And then we'll talk about the special events, which has primarily been the Global Encryption Day celebration that we've done for the last couple of years. Talked about these partnerships. I just can't tell you how important that they've been. Again, it's taking the lead on something that all of these organizations would like to do, but they have limited bandwidth as well. So they're willing to partner and let me just take the charge and lead this activity. And I really, honestly, I'm doing every little detail of it, from the video to the venue to getting the catering. I mean, everything. So it's a lot of work actually, and it's a ton of work for me to do on a monthly basis. So it keeps me very busy, but it helps me develop very close relationships with these other groups, and that is just priceless. Yeah, so continuously engaging with stakeholders. Obviously, I'm always doing that. Strong social media presence. Over the last couple of years, we've published a ton of videos on YouTube, over 80 videos, 10,000 views on X, Twitter. We have, for the most recent 2 meetings, I've been featuring each of the pretty good policy breakfast speakers in their own separate video and their own posts so that can be reshared. So I've got just like 5,000 views for the last couple of meetings. LinkedIn, growing presence there. So I'm actually live streaming now the Pretty Good Policy Breakfast to all 3 of these platforms. And again, just trying to get more leadership out there and more take these things to a higher level of profile. I wanted to share with you just a very short video of one of the speakers at a PGP breakfast recently. This is Lizzie Fallon. She is a legislative director for Representative Emmer, Whip Emmer, in the House. And I just loved what she said. I thought it just, to me, it crystallizes why I'm doing the PGP breakfasts, and it highlights people like her who I think are just doing amazing work for the industry. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to play that for you for a couple minutes. It's about 4 minutes, I think. Okay, I understand you can't hear it. I don't know why that would be, because I thought that should just work. I can hear it. Any ideas there, Ryan? Or I could just skip it here. Let me see if there's a setting that I can change real quick. No, I don't think so. So I'm gonna just skip that. I'll share a link afterwards. So let me see if I can skip. Okay, I should have tested that. Sorry about that. Okay, so I mentioned Global Encryption Day, and this was just a wonderful event this year. It's in November 21st, I believe, every year, and I'm already planning for the next Global Encryption Day. You can see here we had Whip Emmer again. You know, he's here giving opening remarks for that event. We had an amazing panel. You know, Zuko was on the panel. You can see we had Marta Belcher. We had the chief security officer from Coinbase. We had Henry from MobileCoin, and a professor at Virginia Tech, Eric Berger, to moderate. So just amazing event, and it was at an amazing venue. Like I'm able to, with Whip Emmer's help in his office, able to secure the Congressional Visitor Center, like this huge, beautiful auditorium right there in the Capitol building. It was really special. So hope to do something like that again this year. By the way, of course, all these videos are available, so you should check them out. Here's some examples of the podcast series. Like at ZCon last year, that was a really special one that I really enjoyed. And we had Vitalik on with Zuko talking about privacy pools. That, again, a very special podcast. And also using the podcast to develop relationships with other groups. Like here we have Chris Edwards from Coinbase. He's the head of Coinbase Institute, or was the head of Coinbase Institute, and Nick Carr, who leads Stand with Crypto Alliance. And I'm going to mention Stand with Crypto Alliance in a minute, too. Okay, so what's next? First of all, don't panic. I think that if a normal person would hear some of the things that some of the other speakers and even I've said today, you might get pretty worried, and I would totally understand that. In fact, one of the questions that came through earlier in this chat was, should everyone lawyer up? I'm a lawyer. I don't practice. I'm not here giving any legal advice, just talking about policy issues. But you know, I do have some advice on that front. So let's go through the rest of these bullets. I think we need to continue to execute. Like, I want to continue to execute on the policy front and make sure that I continue to build these relationships and make sure that we're very visible in the policy space. I think that is so important to like forge these alliances. And while you're doing so, you're humanizing our project. You're putting a face and developing relationships directly with our project. It's very difficult to attack something where you can put a face to it, and you know the people, and you know the people are doing things for the right reasons, and that you know, you can't attribute things to them that just aren't true. It's just not as easy to do when you have a real person that's connected with something. So I think that having a presence is just absolutely critical. I think we need to onboard new users as quickly as possible. That's the best thing that would secure the future of the project, is to be used more in any respect and for any, you know, good use case that is aligned with our mission. But to this point about, you know, lawyering up, I think we need to prepare for the worst. I really do. I've said this to the ECC team and to others that even though I don't believe you know, we're going to be treated like some of the other projects that have been in criminal cases and criminal indictments recently, I feel we're completely different in many respects than a lot of what's happened with other projects, and we do everything for the right reasons, and we're 100% legitimate. But I think that we do have to prepare for the worst, and I think that may not mean lawyering up. I think that's always good advice to talk to attorneys, but it might mean changing the way the software is developed, and I don't think necessarily even getting out of the U.S. as a jurisdiction is an answer for that. I think that what did JW say earlier, that he was looking for the character to come forward that you basically can't work with and you can't align with, and you just have to let them do their work. Well, I am kind of hopeful that we'll have some of those characters emerge, and I think that would be good for the long-term survival of the project. And then I would say, and I don't feel good about saying this, but I think it's important to recognize it. Just don't let a crisis go to waste. And I think we have a crisis with these criminal cases that have been brought, and it's very concerning to us. But I do think that we should use this opportunity to remind the crypto community that we are different. We have been building Zcash for the right reasons, and we've been doing it in a way that we truly believe should be protected through our legal system in the US and everywhere, really. And that some of these other projects, they may have had great intentions and they may have been doing things for the right reasons too, but we were designed for this. I mean, this is our bread and butter. And I was at a Bitcoin conference recently here in DC, and I think a good chunk of one day was spent with human rights advocates talking about using Bitcoin and like the importance of Bitcoin as a use case and as a tool for human rights advocates around the world. And it was just bothering me so bad to think that these people should be using Zcash, and I don't know why they're not sometimes. I mean, I know that there may be some good reasons why, maybe they just don't know better, but I think that every time I hear a conversation like that, I should be hearing about Zcash as well and talking about Zcash as a tool, and now some of those tools are not available anymore to the Bitcoin community, and it's a good time to just remind people that like we build for this reason, and we're trying to provide a tool that is fit for purpose for those use cases. Okay, go to some questions. Let's see what we have. Yeah, the question is, I've been reading about CSAM, client-side scanning, other regulations against encryption. Do you see anti-privacy regulation in cryptocurrency as being part of this larger climate, or does it seem relatively separate? I think it is part of the larger climate, but the crypto is in many ways, some of those issues obviously are quite severe, and they get the attention of policymakers. But when you're talking about the financial ecosystem, I think it might even be more attractive for policymakers to like focus on illicit finance and that issue broadly within crypto. So yeah, I think it's all related, but I think that crypto is probably the bigger target, an easier target in some ways. How important will the outcomes of the 2024 election cycle be for the next 4 years of crypto policy in the US? Are big policy shifts possible? Absolutely, they are possible. If there is a change in the administration, it would be hugely important for crypto. It would change who's leading the SEC, other agencies perhaps. It would change everything, to be candid. And I'm not a person to advocate for any particular candidate because, frankly, I'm not thrilled with our selections that we have available to us. But boy, I am hopeful for a change because it would be wonderful for the cryptocurrency industry. Okay, I think that's all the questions, and I think that's all I have. So again, it's just an honor to be here. I'm happy to answer questions afterwards and follow up with you, and look forward to continuing to fight for Zcash. Take care, everybody.
What's up, everybody? Checking in from day 3 of ZconV with another episode of Zcon Sessions. Right now, I've got Chris Tobio from the Electric Coin Company, who I used to work with and have a lot of respect for. So I'm super excited for this conversation. I think a good way to always start these is like just quick introduction, what you've been working on like for the last little bit. And then there's a specific topic I want to talk about today, but let's do the intro first.
All right, cool. So my name is Chris. I've been working at ECC for a year and a half in official capacity, but I started working with Zcash in a different capacity in like 2018 or 19. At ECC, I do comms and media and digital and just lots of different support functions. I'm in that like marketing realm.
Very cool. Very cool. One of those items that you've worked on in the past was a poster called "Privacy is Normal," and that phrase. It ended up going very viral. So if you're not familiar with "Privacy is Normal," it originally was posted in a response to something saying that crypto can only be used for crime, and then Vitalik retweeted it. And then in the event of some of the things that happened last year in the privacy space, a lot of organizations within just the broader cryptocurrency space outside of Zcash just took the poster and ran with it. And it went viral for a solid few weeks. And that has been the slogan. I mean, I was recently at ETH Amsterdam, and that was the "Privacy is Normal" was the slogan.
Oh, cool.
So that is even extending and being used into this year. But also, what was the inspiration? How did you? The poster is brilliant. It outlines just normal people needing privacy. And what was the inspiration? What caused you to work on that?
So in, I think it was 2019, when I had really sort of fallen into the Zcash world, I started working on this idea because what I found is that when I tried to talk to people about privacy and what Zcash was, they were kind of like, cool, but whatever, and would just kind of like move on to the next thing. And I felt like there was some kind of a disconnect between what privacy is and how people feel about privacy, maybe. So what I mean by that is that, privacy can be a triggering word, and it can trigger someone to run away or like abandon the conversation.
Yep.
And I think that's because a lot of us view privacy as a conflict. Like, privacy is a weapon against some nefarious